Hey guys, Jake Danner here, and today I'm presenting you with my DraftKings and FanDuel NFL picks for Week 4. Now before I get started, like always, I just wanted to let you guys know that these picks are made for GPPs, or in other words tournaments, and not your typical cash game play. Feel free to use these picks for cash games, however, these picks are made with GPPs in mind. And with that being said, let's move right into our Week 4 picks, starting with the quarterback. At quarterback this week, I'm looking cheap, and I'm looking at Deshaun Watson of the Houston Texans going up against the Tennessee Titans. He has a DraftKings price of $5,100 and a FanDuel price of $7,300. The first reason why I like Deshaun Watson this week is the fact that his volume has increased in every week so far in 2017, meaning that in Week 1, 2, and 3, he's gone up in passing attempts in every game. After that, another reason why I like Watson this week is the fact that he has an average of 41.6 rushing yards per game, giving him a high floor. And finally, I like the matchup in general this week going up against the Tennessee Titans. It might not be a high-scoring game, however, it is projected to be a very close game. And with that being said, I know that close games will lead to more passing attempts for Deshaun Watson. And also, I really don't think that the Texans will get the ground game going against a pretty solid Tennessee front seven. Moving on to running back, we have Christian McCaffrey of the Carolina Panthers going up against the New England Patriots. He has a DraftKings price of $6,800 and a FanDuel price of $6,400. So far this season, if you've been paying attention to the NFL, you would see that the Patriots defense has surrendered a lot of yards and a lot of points. Their defense ranks dead last in points and yards allowed per game this season. This is great news for Christian McCaffrey, as he had a breakout week last week, and he looks to continue that momentum going into this week. Also, when you look at the matchup between the Patriots and the Panthers, most people would think that the Patriots will be playing with the lead, and I am one of those people. And this is very good for Christian McCaffrey, as he is a pass-catching back in a lot of ways, so he gets that PPR bonus, which is great for DFS. Also, playing from behind means more playing time for McCaffrey, as Jonathan Stewart doesn't really play in those third down roles. At running back 2, we have yet another rookie. We have 3 rookies in a row, and this time we have Leonard Fournette of the Jacksonville Jaguars going up against the New York Jets. He has a DraftKings price of $6,700 and a FanDuel price of $7,700. Through 3 games this year, the New York Jets ranked 27th in rushing yards allowed and 26th in points allowed per game in 2017. That alone is a good enough reason to like Fournette this week. However, one of the reasons I really like him this week is the fact that the Jaguars most likely won't be playing catch-up against the Jets offense that isn't too good. A lot of the times this season, the Jaguars will take out Fournette, put in Ivory, put in Grant for those passing downs, and I don't see this game presenting that many passing down opportunities for the Jaguars, meaning that Fournette's going to be on the field as pretty much a 3-down back for the most part. Finally, I love Fournette this week because the Jaguars have a really depleted receiving core. Since Allen Robinson tore his ACL, the Jaguars have a receiving core of Marquise Lee, Allen Hurns, and then at tight end they have Mercedes Lewis. And that is by no means an elite receiving core, meaning that the Jaguars will be relying on the run very heavily this week, much like how they did last week against Baltimore. Moving on to my first receiver this week, we have DeAndre Hopkins of the Houston Texans going up against the Tennessee Titans. He's a DraftKings price of $6,400 and a FanDuel price of $7,300. My biggest reason for liking Hopkins this week is the fact that he serves as the key stacking option with quarterback Deshaun Watson, who, as I mentioned before, is my quarterback for many of my tournaments this week. Apart from this, though, even if you're not using Deshaun Watson, you should still like DeAndre Hopkins this week, as he leads his team in targets, catches, and yards in every single game this season. This trend will most certainly continue this week going up against Tennessee, who ranks 26th in pass yards allowed per game. Also, Tennessee really doesn't have a super solid number 1 corner, meaning that Hopkins should continually see these targets, as he has no real threat of anyone taking them away from him. At wide receiver 2, we have another guy with pretty similar pricing, and that is Golden Tate of the Detroit Lions going up against the Minnesota Vikings. He has a DraftKings price of $6,300 and a FanDuel price of $7,100. As any regular fantasy football player knows, the Detroit Lions really don't get it going on the ground game, and this has been a trend for quite a few years now. And this is a trend that will not break this week going up against the Minnesota Vikings' stout front seven, and in turn this will lead to more targets for Golden Tate. While this matchup doesn't seem too attractive with Xavier Rhodes on the other side of the ball, I do not think this will have much of an influence on Tate's game, as Xavier Rhodes is a shadow cornerback. However, Tate runs a lot of underneath routes and screen passes, kind of routes that aren't going to be limited by a receiver like Rhodes. Also, Golden Tate leads his team in targets, catches, and yards so far this season. He almost had 2 touchdowns last week, but as we saw, he was just inches short of making that, and I think he should be able to find the end zone again this week, giving him some high upside. At wide receiver 3, we're going back to the Texans and Titans game with Rishard Matthews. He has a DraftKings price of $4,900 and a FanDuel price of $6,000. With rookie Corey Davis out, Matthews should continue to see number 1 receiver looks all game. While Mariota spreads out the ball pretty well, Rishard Matthews has been his favorite target, especially when Corey Davis is out. Secondly, the Texans don't have an elite secondary anymore, with A.J. Bouye now a part of the Jacksonville Jaguars. They do have a solid defense, however they don't really have a top-tier guy who's going to match Rishard Matthews step for step. Finally, I love Matthews this week because he has a really cheap price, but he also has a really high upside, something that you're always looking for when playing GPPs in tournaments. At tight end, we're staying cheap again with Cameron Brate of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the New York Giants. He's a DraftKings price of $3,800 and a FanDuel price of $5,300. Now, if you watch my videos this year, you would notice that I've targeted the Giants against tight ends every single week since I've been putting out videos. The Giants have given up a touchdown to tight ends in all 3 contests this year, and I don't see this changing. With the Buccaneers bringing in O.J. Howard, I know that some targets at the tight end position will be going to him. However, the red zone targets have been there for Brate, and they have not been there for O.J. Howard. While I wouldn't call Cameron Brate a punt play, he is one of those guys that I'm sort of relying on to get a touchdown this week. However, he's not the tight end that's going to dominate most of my lineups that I'm playing this week. On the defensive side of the ball this week, we have the Cincinnati Bengals defense going up against the Cleveland Browns. They have a DraftKings price of $3,500 and a FanDuel price of $4,600. Last week, the Bengals defense looked pretty solid going up against Green Bay's talented offense. Then this week, they get a much better matchup going against the Browns. Although they're still not at home, when you're comparing Green Bay and Cleveland's offense, there's a whole world of a difference there. In Week 4, Vontaze Burfict is making his return. He's a star linebacker for the Bengals, and I think that he can promote some turnovers. And finally, this Cleveland Browns team is very young. They have a rookie quarterback in Deshaun Kaiser, who has been prone to mistakes so far this season. And with those mistakes comes turnovers, and that's really what you're looking for in a defense for fantasy football. To wrap it all up, I have some additional picks for you guys, and I have an additional pick for each position. At quarterback, somebody that I like this week is Dak Prescott going against the Rams. Prescott has had 19 plus DraftKings points in each contest this season, and I think that he will be able to continue that this week going against the Rams. At running back, a guy that I'll be using a lot is Dalvin Cook of the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Lions. I think that with Sam Bradford out again, Dalvin Cook will be relied on a lot, and last week he had 27 carries, and there's no telling how many carries he can have this week. After that, I included another running back, which is Kareem Hunt of the Kansas City Chiefs going against the Eagles, and this guy is an absolute beast, and I would have had him in my video earlier on as my main picks. However, he is playing Sunday night, so he doesn't fall in line with a lot of the contests that DraftKings and FanDuel hold. One of my additional picks at wide receiver this week is A.J. Green of the Cincinnati Bengals going against the Browns. And as I've kind of touched on before, Green is one of my favorite players this week. However, his price tag is not too high, but it is higher. I'll be using him in lineups where I have some extra cash to put around. I like A.J. Green this week going against the Browns in a matchup that he's dominated since he entered the NFL. In my additional picks, I'm staying cheap again at tight end with Jesse James of the Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Ravens. He's seen the red zone targets. he's seen the targets overall. He only has a DraftKings price of 3,000, so he's very cheap, but he does have that touchdown upside, and that's pretty much what I was looking for in Cameron Brate. But I think that Cameron Brate sort of has a little bit of the edge to get that touchdown. And finally, we're staying in Pittsburgh with the Steelers defense going up against the Ravens. And as any football fan knows, Steelers versus Ravens is usually a bloodbath, and these games are not typically high scoring. Games that are sort of low scoring, lots of field goals, and a potential for a lot of turnovers. So needless to say, the Steelers will be one of my favorite defenses this week. They have a price very similar to the Bengals, so I'll be kind of mixing and matching there. But I would say I'm giving the edge to the Bengals going against the Browns, as they have a better matchup with the opposing offense. Okay guys, that's it for my picks for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or questions, I'd love if you commented down below. I'd like to engage with you guys and get your thoughts and opinions on some of my picks, some of your picks or players that you're using this week. And at last, I'm putting out videos every single week, so make sure you return next week around this same time to check out my picks for week 5 and so forth. Thanks again guys for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.